up, everybody? Happy Wednesday to ya. Do hope you're having a great week as we are embarking on a morning edition of Lombardi Time Brews Live, just to check in with everybody. Yeah, you may notice right off the bat, it's just me today. She can't come in the morning, so Claudia's not going to be here. But on a scheduling note, next week we are going to be doing a late night edition, not super late, like 8 p.m.-ish. I'll get you the exact details later. But next week is going to be a nighttime edition. And the reason why I'm going to do this for a little 2-week trial is just to see if people like these times, if people were available, maybe give some others a chance to ask questions in a live, etc. So a little 2-week kickup, we'll just kind of see how it goes. But I also wanted to get you the news and notes from the first day of mandatory minicamp that happened to take place yesterday. So, of course, the Packers did a practice, then Matt LaFleur spoke, and then even Brian Gutekunst did a bunch of speaking last night as he appeared on Cheeseheads TV with Nagler and Banky. He did about a 20-minute interview with them and did give us some details. So I'm going to give you just kind of a roundup, a quick breeze through of the headlines for minicamp, and then we'll see what you fine folks have to say. Also, one other relevant thing to the channel, no one, from what I saw, no one knew this was coming. Yesterday, Facebook changed a bunch of their restrictions or guidelines or criteria to go live on Facebook. So if you generally watch us on Facebook, per their changes, we no longer qualify to go live on Facebook. So I'll start sharing links there. You just got to hop on over. Thanks a lot for crushing the little guy, Facebook. Anyway, so let's get to these news and notes. First of all, from a transaction, a personnel standpoint, both of these things were revealed yesterday. The Packers requested a visit with kicker Jake Bates. Hey, he's gained some fame in the USFL. He even hit a 64-yard game winner the other day, or just a few weeks ago. This guy's made headlines, made waves as a kicker in the USFL. The Packers were one of several teams that have requested a visit. So the Packers do have an open roster spot on their 91-man roster, since they still get the exemption for Dumagu for at least a little bit longer. So, we'll see if it comes into fruition at all. Bates has spent some time with the Texans previously before this stint with the USFL. So we'll see where it goes. But nonetheless, Packers have requested the visit. Also, from a contract standpoint, in regards to Jordan Love and Kenny Clark, both of them spoke about their contracts at their lockers yesterday, and then Goot did mention them, kind of expound on some answers with Cheesehead TV last night. Basically, the feeling with Jordan Love, between Jordan Love himself and Brian Gutekunst, both basically saying, it's going to get done. Again, they continue to acknowledge that. Both, again, mentioned that it should be done before camp, or that's the hope, right? Jordan, when he was asked, got very coy and just kind of smiled, said that he was optimistic that it was going to be done before camp. Brian said, oh, yeah, we would have loved to have it done already, but, it's going to get done. Kenny Clark was a little bit more interesting, though. Kenny Clark in his locker talked about how he'd love to be a Packer for the rest of his career, and he knows that talks are still ongoing. On the Packers side of things, Brian Gutekunst said, oh, yeah, we'd love to keep Kenny around. The fact that he's only 28, in spite of how much football he's played for us, the fact that he's only 28, that does help, because generally the Packers don't give out third contracts. Well, in this case, they very, very well. But he also mentioned that, he didn't say this explicitly, but this is the real feeling of Gutekunst's quote, is that Love's got to get done first. Because Gutekunst mentioned about Clark that they have to fit in the contract around what Jordan Love gets. So if you're thinking extensions for these two guys amongst other Packers, sounds like the first domino that has to fall is indeed Jordan Love. Hey fam, good morning to ya. Got to be interesting, or going to be interesting, how Gary gets deployed. Feels like he needs to be remotivated after his big contract. I talked about it a little bit on Monday. The fact that Gary just dropped off towards the back end of the year. No sacks at all over the course of his last 7 games. Even his pressure rate went down. The thing with Gary is, though, from what I've observed year in and year out at training camp and just I'm not sure I'm willing to say that it's a motivation thing for Rashawn Gary. That guy doesn't seem to be not motivated at all. Who knows what it exactly was? My guess, and keep in mind, last year was coming off of that ACL injury. He came back quicker from that ACL injury than a lot of us thought that he would. I personally would be willing to bet that there might have been some stamina issues or endurance problems. Like eventually it just wore down on him. His whole body wore down from that recovery. And instead of ramping up to the playoffs like we've seen Gary do before, instead it kind of tapered down. And that's kind of my guess. Hopefully we're going to see a rejuvenated Rashawn Gary, definitely. If I'm also saying probably shutting you down from overheating their servers with too many lists. Man, I wish that was the case. But look, I don't know, Facebook, that's just annoying. Because not only did they revamp the criteria, they revamped it in a way that, like, we're not even close to being able to go live on Facebook now. Like, Facebook is probably our least followed platform out of all of the LTV stuff. So, like, that was very unwelcome news when I set up this stream last night. And then I'll say, we're going to have to pay for Jordan, and it's going to keep going up money. Yeah, I will say going to be tough to give all that money for a QB with inaccuracy issues, but does have good ball skills. And the accuracy did get a lot better throughout the course of the year. A lot of the advanced metrics about like ball placement, stuff like that, you could see kind of like season A in the first half, season B in the second half. So obviously they have that going for them. But yeah, Jordan Love's going to get paid. I have no doubt that this contract, when it does get done, is going to fall somewhere in the lines of like, I think he is going to be a top 5 quarterback. I think we're going to see the contract fall somewhere between 50 and 55. I just have a hard time believing that he's going to surpass 55 to go over Burrow. Unless, and this is a big unless, if Trevor Lawrence and Tua get their contracts done before Love and they push up from Burrow or are at Burrow's number, then maybe we would see Love surpass. But if that doesn't occur, then I think we see Love fall somewhere between 50 and 55. And I really think that's what it's going to wind up being. So in terms of practice yesterday, here's just a quick little rundown for you. In terms of attendance, there was some headlines made yesterday and people freaked out because Jerry Alexander, Keyshawn Nixon, and Xavier McKinney were not present. This is the mandatory minicamp, like June 11th to 13th. Everybody's got to be there. This isn't the voluntary stuff like we've seen, and they had perfect attendance. Well, turns out Matt LaFleur told these 3 members of the secondary to take some time off, that they were excused from the mandatory minicamp, in large part because all 3 players had already met their thresholds to get their workout bonuses for the offseason. I don't think this is purely monetary, though. Generally, in the past, when we've seen LaFleur tell vets to get out, especially like clustered at one position like this, it's because he's aiming to do something else. It's because he's aiming to get eyes on somebody else, deploy someone in a different way that he can't do with all these vets hanging out there. So he told the 3 vets in the secondary, Nixon, McKinney, Jair, go. And then maybe it was to get eyes on the young guys. But nonetheless, it wasn't like they were just skipping mandatory camp. It wasn't that they're unhappy. They were told by Matt LaFleur to go, and he did confirm that yesterday in what wound up being like a closed press conference for LaFleur, since Packers didn't broadcast it anywhere. Standouts on the field yesterday. There were two smaller names in the roster, but nonetheless big practices yesterday for the 2 of them. Kenneth Dumagoo, the International Pathways Program player, he wound up having 3 sacks yesterday, and then at his locker was asked about it and said, like, he's got a return on the investment for Green Bay. They believed in him. They kept him around. Green Bay's all about love, and he wants to return that love. But, I mean, yeah, he returned love to the ground yesterday, 3 sacks. Then there was Zane Anderson, kind of the depth safety special teams ace for the Packers. He wound up with 3 interceptions, including a couple on Sean Clifford. His practice was kind of coming down to a close. So 3 picks yesterday for Zane Anderson, a standout day for him as well. Then, from the press conference for Matt LaFleur, a few guys that he highlighted as standout players. One was Carrington Valentine. We've talked about how LaFleur has been incredibly complimentary of Eric Stokes to this point. Today, he spread some love over to the other person in the cornerback 2 competition, Carrington Valentine, and he said, this is the quote, "That's a guy that stands out, quite frankly, in my mind." And then he said that Valentine was also challenged to add weight, and he's come in a lot more physical thus far this year. So it doesn't appear, in spite of the compliments given to Stokes thus far, it's not like his job on lockdown. LaFleur very much is considering Valentine there as well. Also was asked about Malik Heath, and I thought that this was a good quote, kind of going the opposite way in the weight trend. LaFleur saying, "I think physically he's in a much better place. He's a little bit lighter. He knows the offense a heck of a lot better, so it allows you to play faster." So Malik Heath getting a shout out from the coach as well. And then a little nugget that got dropped, which is actually pretty significant that I really haven't seen enough people talk about yet. Matt LaFleur acknowledged in the press conference yesterday that to this point in the offseason program, he's not been the one calling plays for the offense. He's handed it off. He did say that that's not what's going to be the case the regular season. This is just so LaFleur can get eyes on other places. But he's not the one calling plays right now. Instead, all of the play calling is coming from Adam Stenavich, the offensive coordinator, and Jordan Love. Now, the reason why that's a big deal is, one, it's showing some trust in the offensive coordinator, but two, it is also showing now that Jordan Love is full on a part of the play calling process. Now we are seeing truly the comfort of Jordan Love, the development in kind of the mental aspect of the game to be back there and actually calling the play. So a very cool little nugget there. Peter, bonjour, Peter. Bonjour, John. I just realized OTA stands for only through ayahuasca in Aaron Rodgers' eyes. Hey, we don't talk about Rodgers often, but I got to tell you, with the massive headlines from Aaron Rodgers yesterday, not attending mandatory minicamp for the Jets. Apparently, it's not about his contract. It's just like he had something more important that he wanted to attend to. Who knows? I will just say I'm personally glad that we're no longer dealing with a quarterback, and the question is, like, is he going to be there or not? Like, luckily, we don't have to deal with that anymore. Steve, what's up, Steve? I'm not worried about what happens at OTAs and mandatory minicamps because I know for sure players will be careful. They don't get hurt, and they don't want to show their full cards. Yeah, I mean, like this, think about like 15 years ago in the NFL world, this was like nothing. Like it was obviously important for the players, for the team and stuff, but the media coverage was not nearly what it is today. And for the players, it's important to keep in mind that they are learning so much right now, especially the rookies. So like talking about whether a player is performing or not, frankly, it's a little early for that in some regards. LaFleur even talked about Jordan Morgan yesterday and how they have been impressed with how Morgan has been able to kind of go from position to position. Yesterday, with the ones alone, he spent time at left tackle, and right guard. But LaFleur also acknowledged that mentally, Jordan Morgan's got a long ways to go. It is June. And there's a lot of time yet before camp even begins. And then when we get into camp, the first 2 weeks before we get to family night is going to be like, well, yeah, they're learning. They're learning the offense. The only players you expect to see fully in sync are a lot of the vets, which Packers don't really have many. So it isn't significant for the trajectory of the team, but is it really that important in the grand scope? Not really. One thing that I can tell you that is worth observing, but isn't necessarily newsworthy in every regard, happens to be the starting lineup as they're rolled out at minicamp, and I do have that for you. So the starting lineup on the offensive line yesterday, or I should say the guys who took the first snaps with the ones, happened to be Dillard at left tackle, strangely enough, Elton Jenkins at left guard, Josh Myers at center, Sean Ryan at right guard, and then Jordan Morgan at right tackle. Defensively, the starters, Preston Smith, Devontae Wyatt, TJ Slayton, Rashawn Gary, Eric Wilson, Quay Walker, Isaiah McDuffie at linebacker. Corners are obviously Stokes and Valentine. And then safeties, Anthony Johnson Jr. and Javon Bullard. As for the rookies, Cooper came in pretty quick. He played with the ones in the nickel defense along with Quay. Also did rotate into this 4-3 base at linebacker, believe mostly for Eric Wilson. And then at the safety position, Anthony Johnson Jr. was subbed out pretty quick in favor of their rookie, Williams. So the rookies, while not all of them are getting snaps with the ones to really like start practice, they are getting rotated in awfully quick. And I do got to believe that that's part of the reason LaFleur told the three vets in the secondary to just like, go get out of here so that we can focus on some younger guys and make sure they're doing their job. All right, so that is the rundown from mandatory minicamp day 1. Obviously, day 2 is occurring today. I'm not sure. I haven't seen a good report out there about like what full availability is like. I do believe reporters are going to be able to be present at practice for a little while, but I don't know as if there's a full like press conference slate or anything. I don't think so. But then once this is wrapped up, the Packers still on their schedule have one more day of mandatory minicamp tomorrow. But it doesn't sound as though it's going to be of the practice variety. Maybe a lot of classroom work, maybe some bonding, whatever. But technically on the schedule, it lasts through tomorrow. Then after that, then it gets quiet. Like real quiet. For about 6-7 weeks until we get to training camp starting on Monday, July 22. It's like the Packers truly enter a quiet period, so we'll see what that brings. Peter, have you heard about that preposterous blockbuster trade rumor with Green Bay trading for CeeDee Lamb and giving Christian Watson and Jaden Reed? Okay, all right. So here's the thing. Yeah, it was terrible and stupid, right? I saw it came from Bleacher Report, and a lot of you know that I do fairly regular appearances for Bleacher Report. They pay me to go on their channel and talk. So here's the thing. When I very first started at Bleacher Report and I had to do an appearance, I was told for my first appearance to come up with dream trades for the Packers. I know some of you know this story. And so I did it. And at that time, I said, like, wouldn't it be cool to bring Davante Adams back? Like, this was last offseason, right? Like, we had a lot of rookie receivers. Davante was already kind of unhappy with the Raiders. They just got rid of Carr. I was like, let's bring him back. So I built a trade around Davante. And then after I did that, it took on this life. And I said in the stream, like, that is not going to happen. This is just wish list. This is just fun to think about. Oh, my God. And then it took on a life of its own. And all of a sudden, I was a Packers insider who had intel that the Packers were going to trade for Davante, and I assuredly was not. So, like, any of these trade things, I now know all too well just how stupidly spread around they can get. Now, I believe that this one came from an article that, like, talked about different trade proposals for CD, and they were league-wide. Right, I believe that was the premise, right? I don't give these much time. The idea that the Packers would trade Christian Watson and Jaden Reed, second round pick for CeeDee Lamb, is so ungodly preposterous. Yes, please give one of the Packers' most valued assets in an early pick, plus 2/4 to 5ths of your ultra young, ultra talented receiving core that are dirt cheap right now for a dude that you're going to bring in. Yes, he's an incredibly good wide receiver, but please bring in a wide receiver that instead you're going to have to pay to like $30 million a year. My God, Brian Gutekunst would hang up the phone so fast in spite of just how good CD is. It's not to discount his ability. Come on. Like, that's just so ignorant of how the Packers operate. If you're going to come up with a fictitious trades, at least have Packer people do it, right? Yeah. Steve, that trade would never happen. For one, Reed and Watson isn't just as good or even better than CeeDee Lamb. Yes, I said it and I'll defend it. From a statistical standpoint, like if Watson were actually healthy for a whole year, put them together. Yeah. Like, does CD put up more stats than either one of them alone? Of course. Like, CD's one of the top receivers in the league, but it's just the idea that the Packers would give up this young receiving core that just got such accolades. I saw like Chad Ochocinco did a national appearance talking about the Packers receiving core and how stacked they are and how they're set up for the long term. And yeah, it's going to be tough to retain them all in a couple of years, but for right now, they have such a good, talented, cheap wide receiver room. The fact that the Packers would trade most or half of that wide receiver room for CeeDee Lamb? No. Dear God, no. And it's also not a rumor. It was just purely made up. Just like I did with the Davante thing. It's just made up. And it's just off-season talk years ago. Hey, fam, not until the league changes where there's 2 QBs at a time. See, now that would be fun, right? Like, I can get with that, sure. Sean Clifford and Michael Pratt getting some playing time. Oh, hey, also, on the note of Michael Pratt, you should note, like, Sean Clifford threw a few interceptions yesterday. If we're interested in the QB2 battle, don't be too interested. It is still minicamp, but Clifford threw a couple picks. Michael Pratt, from the sounds of the reporters who were in the stadium, sounds like he had a real good day. Like, another one. The last 2 practices have been open to the public. Sounds like Pratt has done very, very well. So, if you keep it score at home, Pratt seems to be doing well. Commando G-Man saying CD won me my fantasy football last year. He good. Yeah, no, and that's not what I'm trying to say. Like, he is definitely one of the top wide receivers in the league. In fact, Claudia, she had him on her team. I don't think she finished better than me in that league, though, so that's good. Also, if you want to join a league with us, check out Patreon. We're doing our first fantasy football league. Go join that, and then you could be in a league with us. A little unnecessary plug there. But yeah, CD is amazingly talented. No doubt. Just the Packers are in a position. Look, you've got Watson for 2 more seasons at his price tag. You've got Jaden Reed for 3 seasons at his price tag. and a second round pick for a dude who is unhappy with his contract, is going to have to get paid $30 million a year. Plus, they got to sign Love, and they're talking about extending Clark. And are these wide receivers coming in 2 years or 3 years? Like, no. I just can't see it. Steve, Lloyd and Jacobs are blowing it up. I'm loving this new backfield. Yeah, I read about how like Jacobs had like his first carry yesterday, went for like 10-ish yards. They're both looking great. I know Paul Brettel talked about how Marshawn Lloyd really showed off yesterday, his change of direction and the speed at which that he can do so. So they sound great. Plus, we know Dylan is in ridiculously good shape compared to what he's been in past years. Not say he was out of shape, but like, dang, if you've seen some of those pictures. So, yeah, let's get it on the field. That's the point I'm arriving at of like, okay, summer's here. Let's get to the good stuff. Let's skip ahead. Hey fam, Sean Clifford, Favre, probably chucking it across the middle. I believe at least one of them was in the end zone, but like, yeah, little baby Favre slinging it. It's not surprising, not a doubt. Peter, how about a trade with the Commanders for Jonathan Allen? It doesn't sound that crazy. I think the Commanders are going to want a crazy haul for Allen. In that way, like I would put the word crazy on it. To acquire a defensive lineman like that. Also, Allen is another one who you're going to have to pay eventually. And the way that defensive tackle salaries have gone, holy buckets, retaining Clark is going to be hard enough. Yeah, no, I wouldn't mind it. Jonathan Allen is an incredibly good defensive tackle, but I think the Packers are pretty comfy. Like Wyatt has been ascending. I think Wyatt is going to do better in this scheme than he did the last scheme for sure. Then you do still have Kenny Clark. Then you've got the development of Carl Brooks. Kobe Wooden, although I didn't mention him, he had a very good day at minicamp yesterday, getting a lot of pressure. So I think the Packers, from their angle, would you want to enhance talent all the time? Of course. But I think the Packers are going to look at that D-line room and say, we're good enough there, especially under the given scheme, to not have to invest significant draft capital in getting a vet to upgrade the space. That's what I would say. If and we need to let our roster settle and see what injuries we get during camp before trades. Yeah, definitely. That's kind of what I'm saying. Like, on the whole with the roster, I would not expect mass changes. One, we don't see Brian Gutekunst do that many trades anyway, right? Especially for vet players. Yeah, he's in every conversation, of which not trading for Darren Waller a couple of years ago, like was widely reported he was going to do, turned out to be one heck of a blessing, considering that he kind of left a lot of different things. Like, and he just straight up retired. The Packers dodged one on that one. But in total, yeah, like I think we're going to see, maybe we'll see some bottom of the roster, like kind of turnover, some, if they bring in Bates, great. Maybe we'll see other moves for like, get rid of this corner, bring in this corner to compete for corner number 6, like that kind of thing. I don't think we're going to see any big overhaul. And certainly, Steve, in your question, do you see Preston Smith getting traded? No, definitely not. No, they redid his contract. In terms of like a restructure this last offseason. No, he's one of the leaders of the defense. He's the oldest dude on the team. He still compiled, depending which tracking, in like 8 to 10 sacks last year. Still has the juice. Preston's going nowhere. No doubt about it. Dale, what's up, Dale? What is Clark's current contract? So his current cap number is about $27 million. It's the highest on the team, and he is entering the last year of his contract. So if the Packers were, and this is part of the clamoring part, a little part, to give him an extension, is if you give Kenny Clark an extension, that $27 million cap number almost assuredly goes down quite a bit as they allocate that money then across the future years of the contract. Or because the Packers are in pretty decent financials right now, that maybe they just leave that 27 alone and just put on new money for the next 3 years, 4 years, create kind of a new contract on the back end. But yeah, Kenny Clark is 28 years old. He's got a cap number of $27 million this year. And that $27 million, keep in mind, part of the reason it's so high is because for years they took money from Clark's contract and pushed it into this final year. It wasn't always set up to be this high of a final year, but they kind of did that themselves with constant restructuring along the last 4 years for Clark. So now we've arrived at this $27 million cap number. He's 28 years old. He's still like a top 10-ish defensive tackle in the NFL. And there's someone that they believe can still ascend to a new height in this new defense. And Brian Gutekunst did mention last night that he's also been incredibly reliable. He does not get hurt a lot, especially for being a bigger body type. He can play a lot of snaps. All of that is going in the Packers and Clark's favor to lock him up. So that's why I do think we may see some kind of Kenny Clark extension. But like I said, Jordan Love's is going to get done first. Brian Gutekunst basically said that last night with Cheesehead TV, that it's important to get Love done first, because that shows you what money you got left and in what years and where. And then you can reallocate accordingly to guys like Kenny Clark and other extensions. All right, everybody, I got to jump on out of here. So I do have a Buddy Wednesday ahead, but thank you for joining me on this morning edition. Keep in mind, if you are a LTB Live regular, next week going to be a nighttime session of Lombardi Time Brews Live. Going to be something like 8 p.m.-ish Lambeau time. I'll get you exact details, of course, as we get closer, but then I've gotten requests before, so let's do something at night. So let's do it next week and give some new people a chance to ask some questions. But thank you for joining me here. Do hope you have a great day today on Friday. Not quite sure what it's going to be yet. It might be a roundup. We'll see what news develops later today, tomorrow, etc. as minicamp rolls up. Might be a roundup of all of the minicamp info, because there's certainly stuff out there and I can play some video clips, etc. So be on the lookout for something like that Friday, or news will break and it'll be something completely different. We'll find out. So you guys go have a great day. I'll see you soon. And as always, go Pack Go.